Welcome back to another episode of Ops Owners. I am so happy to have with me Julie Lunsford here. Julie is a good friend of mine. Julie is the founder of InJoy Workforce Solutions, who's redefining the hiring game with a framework rooted in joy and purpose. From corporate HR to life on the road in an RV to building a mission-driven business, Julie's journey is as remarkable as the results she's helping teams unlock. Julie, thanks for being here.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Why don't you go ahead and just give me a rundown on your background, how you got your agency started. Just tell me about your work life.
Okay, so I guess I started out in corporate HR and moved from Memphis, Tennessee to Salt Lake City to start that career. And then once I had my third child, I decided to come home and be a stay-at-home homeschooling mom. And in that, we decided as a family, I pushed it a little bit. This is probably, we'll get into geniuses, but my wonder coming full force.
Yeah.
But we decided to pack up, sell everything, and move into an RV full time. And we did that for about 4 years.
Wow.
And then my now ex-husband and I separated, and that put me back into the workforce.
Okay.
In the meantime, I was able to glean from the RV community because there was a variety of what people were doing to fund their travels and do remote work. And so I entered into the virtual assistant space, and that is where I became an assistant for John Glon, that we both know.
Yes.
And none of what I'm about to tell you is going to be surprising based on what we know about John. But he introduced Working Genius to me. Hold on. No, so I went from virtual assistant onto the leadership team and got John a new virtual assistant. And so I was in an operations finance role on the leadership team. And that's when John introduced Working Genius to the team. So when I was aware of what Working Genius was bringing to the table and aware of my geniuses and how they functioned in the team, I realized that I probably was not in the right role. I'll say it gave me the language for that. I already knew that finance was not my passion. So in that, John and I went on to start a coaching business together, and now I have decided that I love the Working Genius framework in recruiting, which was my original background. So I've been able to piece all of that together to decide to go ahead and start InJoy Workforce Solutions this year.
Yeah, love it. I'm excited to talk about Working Genius. I've heard about, as soon as I met you, it's just been not you. Everybody else around you is just talking all about Working Genius, and it really has given a good language to how I interact with other team members and on a leadership team, and it's just been such a cheesy, but such a joy to be able to operate in that kind of alignment with what makes sense for me. It's more than just a personality assessment. It feels like it really is how do team members mesh well together, and how do people bring different giftings and way they process to the table, and how can you form a good team around this framework. So really excited to get into that. For the listeners who don't know Working Genius, can you just give a 30,000 foot overview of the framework and how it brings value?
Okay. 30,000 feet is
Sure.
the right way to explain this, just because overall we use altitude to explain Working Genius. And so what you said is exactly right. It is less personality and more productivity in work. And so basically it's how work is going on, whether we're paying attention to it or not. And when do we show up at the doctor? When we're thinking about our circulatory system and everything else that's functioning well, we show up at the doctor when it stops functioning well. So that's usually when teams decide that they need something additional to the other personality assessments that they have been introduced to. So it starts with, so the acronym is WIDGET, and it's basically how work gets done. And so if you are starting out in a process, it's usually brainstorming. And so that's where wonder comes in. And again, you're up here in altitude. And a lot of times when we are talking in meetings, we're discussing the altitude that we're in so we know what genius is to bring to the table at that time in the meeting. So wonder, invention, discernment, galvanizing, enablement, and tenacity. And so again, that's where you're starting up here with curiosity and questions, and then landing the plane and getting the whole project or work across the finish line.
Okay. So yeah, from start to finish, this is how work gets done, and this is how people with different skill sets within that widget framework interact with one another.
Right.
I know that for me, I'm a tenacity, but no, I'm sorry, discerning
You're DT,
first. And then,
right?
yes, DT. So discerning first, and then tenacity. And so like I'm the one who asks all the questions that everybody hates. Like just get off my back and just accept all of my brilliant ideas. I'm like, I'm sorry, that's just not how my brain works. Like I want to take good ideas and make them great, and like
Right.
really like bring a fine tooth comb through them to make sure that all the bugs are worked out before we start moving on to like, okay, let's actually do the thing. Like, let's make this thing happen. That's where my tenacity comes in. Like I have to envision the thing working properly, not just a grand vision, but a thing working properly. And then like, I'm going to make sure that it is accomplished in that particular way.
So just to interrupt real quick. So
Yeah.
because we both have discernment. So, so if you are using the altitude again, I'm wonder and discernment. So
Okay.
your discernment and tenacity. And so I tend to become curious and then start asking questions. You take what wonder invention has, and then you start asking the questions about whether this is a good idea, and you can see it, on down the road. And not only can you see if it's a good idea, you can get it completely done at the end. So that,
Yes.
I've seen in our conversations just how our discernment shows up in different ways, just because of the altitude differences, right?
Yeah. 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 I love it. You mentioned that the Working Genius provided you the language to know that, hey, this finance thing really isn't for me. Tell me a little bit more about that, and then I'm really curious about for teams that do start implementing this. Well, what happens when team members are just not operating in the right seat? They're not living in that genius.
Right. So for me, when I was in the finance role, there were different parts of it that spoke to me, as far as aligning the company with the budget and wondering how we could do things better and getting that all set up. In fact, starting any process is something that I really enjoy doing, putting processes together. And I told you when you invited me on here, right? You said this podcast is about systems, and I was like, oh, I don't know. Yeah, maybe a disappointment. I'm not necessarily a systems kind of girl, but I love piecing together systems and seeing how things can work better.
Yes.
I just am not great at following the processes that I actually come up with. I actually need those people at the lower altitude to follow the process that I was curious about starting in the first place. And so one thing that I realized when I was talking to our project manager on the team with Excel specifically, she loved being in Excel. If I called her with a question, she lit up with the idea of being in spreadsheets, and she could spend her whole day in spreadsheets and get joy and energy. And I'm not even sure if Working Genius had been introduced to me at that point, but I just remember having that aha moment of the thing that drives me crazy, one man's trash, another man's treasure, is actually bringing her joy. So as a single mother, I was in the mindset, and I know many people get in this mindset of, who cares if I like my job? I just need to keep a roof over our heads and food on the table. And so when I got out of that mindset and was able to see that I'm one depriving someone of being in their joy and energy by even doing this. If you talk to a bookkeeper about finance, you'll see them light up. And for me, it would something that could possibly make my week go into 60 and 65 hours a week for someone who loves and enjoys it could easily turn that into 30 hours. Like their productivity shoots up. And so when you put that into a team environment, any team environment, when you're coming into meetings and you have the people that are, I didn't get this thing done again, and everybody's labeling that person, or why does that person keep bringing us back up into this brainstorming session? Like these different ways of using this language. One, it helps with collaboration. Two, you can say, hey, I need help because this isn't my genius. Or guess what? It's just going to take me a little bit longer, or I'm going to have to carve out this section of the day in order to get that part done. Nobody gets out of doing the whole widget. Like at some point you've got to be in that, but just knowing how you're going to show up in that and preparing for that with either asking for help or saying that I need more time, or a practice that I have right now as a solopreneur, having to do everything, is I make sure I am fueling myself in the morning with the geniuses that do bring me joy, or the activities and the tasks. And then that fuels me up to be able to put the energy towards the more tenacious tasks throughout the day.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that is a good point. For everybody starting out in a small business capacity, and for a while, you do have to wear quite a bit of hats, and you do have to live. You obviously want to live in your genius as much as possible, but then you have the other places that you'd rather not, but for the sake of the business, you have to.
Right.
How, when building teams, when you're talking with teams, and like whether it's executive search or other building teams, like how important is it for that kind of mutual respect of like, hey, you bring these giftings to the table, my giftings over here. How imperative is this sort of like, again, mutual? So both sides,
Right.
both parties seeing like, hey, you are strong in my areas of weakness, and this person is strong in their areas of weakness. How important is that mutual respect?
So the breakdown in that is typically going to be communication.
Okay.
So I just had on my podcast, I had Grace Gavin, who would be a great guest for you. She
Great.
co-authored a book called No Honesty, KNOW, Honesty.
Okay.
And we were talking about the communication piece of this, because a lot of times if you use EOS language, if you have a visionary and an integrator, they need opposing geniuses to work well together. You need the visionary to be up here with the ideas, and you need the integrator to be able to put the details and the systems together to make that dream come true, right? So they need each other, and they need to know they need each other, but they're going to communicate very differently, and you will feel the tug of, I want to go back up here. No, we've got to go down here. And you need it in order to be honest with each other. You need the language in order to be honest. Like, I need you, and I'm going to talk differently than you, and I'm going to be in a stage of work that is different than you. And so just understanding that you need this, as in you need each other, right? So when I have had many conversations with visionaries and integrators of, oh, that's why I thought you were such a jerk that day when you said this, but you were actually helping me get this to where I wanted it to be. And honestly, discerners probably get on most people's nerves because we are halting the process right there in the middle. The visionary is like, why are you even questioning this? Of course this is a great idea. And the people down here are like, just give me the information and let me go. And the discerners are like, whoa, wait, let's not let's stop here and let's really consider this before we get all the way down here and have to start back because we missed this thing that I can foresee coming in the future.
Yeah, because what's at stake? It's a lot of hours, a lot of money being given to the wrong things if ideas are not properly sorted and organized before we start going.
Right.
There's a lot at stake, and it is important. But as I've learned in my role, it is important to have the vision as well, because you need to envision what the final product is going to be, have the language for it,
Right.
and then, like you said, then hand it off to the people who are going to do the thing. On either ends of the spectrum, there needs to be communication between the wonder and invention people, and then the enablement and tenacity people. You need, on either side, you need clear communication, so that things actually get done and not just
Right.
live up in idea world.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so for your focus is mostly on recruiting and helping out with recruiting. So what you said that you're not much of a systems gal, but it's I firmly believe for anybody to operate in today's business world, you have to have systems and procedures even loosely defined. And so
Right.
what are the how do you go about your process for the recruiting? You bring There's an agency that needs help, a small business that needs help with recruiting and finding the right people for the right seats. How do you go about getting to know that specific role that's necessary, and then getting connected to the right person to fill that role?
Okay, so my favorite type of company to work for is someone who's been introduced to the Working Genius
Okay.
framework, because that's the mentality I'm going into with. And so before when I was a recruiter, my interview process was always much more conversational. And I don't know if you feel this in your discernment, but there's a gut instinct that I have about that person, just in a more conversational way or dialogue. Always still have to stick with, staying in the same frame of questioning with each individual, for as a legal. I have that HR background for systems to know what trajectory to go down as far as the interview process. But once I was introduced to Working Genius, and now I know that I'm using Working Genius as the assessment process in my recruiting, I am going more along the lines of what is bringing you joy. So the questions that I am asking have a lot more to do with where someone's finding their joy and energy. I talk in the resume or about the resume just a little bit, but more along the lines of, I saw that you were in this space here and now you're in this. What made you make that jump? And so I'm vetting out what tasks, as far as the job description are concerned, what tasks are going to bring this person joy and energy, and what are they going to procrastinate on? Because overall, I'm doing both people a disservice if I'm putting them in a job that it does not bring them joy and energy. My passion is aligning people with their passion. And so what I like to start with is, right now I'm partnering up with Working Genius facilitators who've already introduced that framework to the company. If that's not the case, then I'm happy to introduce it to the company, because the team map overall is where you are going to see where your gaps are. And a team map just shows you on your team where everybody falls in that widget, and if you're missing a discerner or you're missing invention or someone in tenacity. And so I try to fill in those gaps and come in and rewrite the job description to be attractive to the person that ultimately will fulfill those geniuses. And then when I'm talking with them, I again go into the joy and energy piece of it. One of my favorite questions is what barring money, time, life, what was your dream job, or what is your dream job? And that even shows me where people align in tasks as well. And then then I am getting those front runners, those people that are going to find joy and energy in that job description, in that role, and culture as well. I love getting to know the culture of a business and matching and aligning that as well. Sending that over and then doing a working genius assessment for those top 3 or 4 candidates and see where they fall in on the team map, overall how well they will do in the role. And then if there's nitty gritty like skill sets that have to happen, one, I see that on the resume, but the overall hiring manager now has 2 to 3 people that are going to find joy and energy in that, and then assessing that with their skill set.
Okay. This reminds me of a conversation we had a few months back. You know that I'm much more aligned with the integrator side of like visionary integrator. Systems processing, like, is just how my brain works. I had asked you for integrators, because on a leadership team, I definitely see more of the more of the focal point is on the top end of the widget, so the wonder and invention, and less focus, again, leadership, on tenacity in that side. That's how I originally saw it. And I had asked you, like, hey, I'm DT. I really want to go this integrator route. Is this like, am I just fooling myself? Like, should I just like forget this dream? Like, and then you would, what had you shared with me? Or what would you share if I'd asked you that again?
Okay, well, so something that you stuck out to me when you said that is, and what it sounded like you said is that you think that either leadership holds the top half of the widget in more high regard, or overall people do. But overall, you're seeing the top half more in line with a leadership quality. Is that what you're saying?
At least again, from the perspective of, the visionary, the prototypical CEO tends to be the idea person, and
Okay.
the prototypical day-to-day worker is the tenacity, enablement tenacity side.
Okay. So one, I would say, okay, let me see how I want to frame this. Okay, visionaries are more the idea people and can typically go into a CEO role, but that doesn't mean that that's where they need to be. So I would say, as a company is growing and as more positions are available, that visionary may just need to be in a visionary seat, and there may need to be more of a CEO person put in that role. And so this is my theory on why you were envisioning it like this, because I, in wonder and discernment, have a huge envy for tenacity. So my framework, my way of looking at it is tenacity is where you want to be. Tenacity is the big game player. Tenacity is the one that gets the stuff done. Like, they are the star, in my opinion, because I had to really say there's actually value in wonder and discernment, because you feel guilty when you are as me when you're showing up in a meeting and tenacity is like, look at the top 10 things I got done in the last 3 hours.
Yeah.
And you're like, I didn't even get my quarterly goal done until 3 weeks after the quarter was
Yeah.
finished, right? So that's where working genius comes in and alleviates the guilt and the judgment. And so so a factor for John and I, as we were working in a business together, is that it was two of us, just the 2 of us, and we were both in wonder. And we both had the frustration of tenacity. So it was we needed that tenacity. We needed that third party to come in and start getting those things across the finish line. So for you, like, the discernment and the tenacity is a great quality for a leader in their appropriate spot on the leadership team. And yes, so it's very encouraging that you could definitely go in that direction, because we just look at something that is the opposite of us. It's just a natural human tendency, and say they show up better in work, life, whatever. There's just an envious piece right there. And so one of the big things in Working Genius is not feeling guilty for who you are and not judging other people for who they are. And that in and of itself brings a big to the leadership team overall.
Yeah. I remember when John, shout out to John, had facilitated.
I know, we're bringing him up a lot.
John, you're coming on the podcast soon. I think I already have you scheduled. When John had facilitated the Working Genius side of our leadership, our annual, he had laid out the team map, which is really, really awesome because like after we as a leadership team went through and said, here's where everybody lands. And here's where everybody's geniuses are. Here's where everybody's frustrations are. Do you see problems here? And so there were that visually showed there are clear holes in our leadership team, or there are clear overemphasis on specific parts. So you had mentioned like you and John both had wonder. Like in a normal environment, that would be really, really great. But if you don't have the other side to kind of balance out the leadership, like then it's like unbalanced.
Right.
And that was such a cool picture to see, like visually, this is how our team, this is what motivates our team. And this is what really frustrates our team. And ideally you would structure a team environment, I'm sure at all levels of the organization. So leadership and further down the stream, to balance as best as possible, balance out and be aware of where those overlaps are and where those underperforming or gaps are.
Right. And I know that team was realigned based on the Working Genius, right?
Yeah. Yeah. We
So,
loved it.
Yeah. Yes, it totally makes sense. And the gaps. So depending on who you have in the organization, how big the organization is, there are some meetings, like let's say you have the leadership team, the ops team, the sales team, and the leadership team is missing invention. Then if that is on one of those other teams for certain meetings, by all means, bring that person with invention into that meeting to get it done. And then I know for John, we also started looking at how rocks, which is basically the term for the quarterly goals,
Right.
In EOS, the deliverables on that are the way that we map those out. Or even if you're in a brainstorming meeting for the rocks, the people that actually are going to love getting the rocks over the finish line are going to be drained by that brainstorming meeting. So just bring them in afterwards and let them know what direction they need to go in.
Yeah, I love that because it's less about clearly defined roles and like this is your job, so you're expected to do this thing. But like if you have access to people who do have this genius that you have a gap in on the leadership team, why not bring them in, elevate them to a place of like feeling like valued for who they are, and having them contribute. You get a ton of cultural buy-in and a team accountability, and it's like there's a better way to handle these things and not be so rigid with like this is your role, so you aren't allowed here.
And that's a team.
Yeah.
That is a team right there. That's how teams should be functioning. So it definitely makes sense. Like the person that loved the Excel spreadsheets did not like writing in-depth emails. So if she had something that she had to explain thoroughly, she would come to me and ask me to help her with the email, because that was more along the lines of what brought me joy. And so it's not about anybody saying like, okay, now I'm going to take 30% of my job and throw it on this person. So now they're working more hours and they're having to do more. No, it's you have this, I have this. Let's bring it together and see how we can make it overall work for the entire company.
Yeah, I love it because that's what's at stake is this thing that we're building. Like, why not do everything we can to make this as flourishing and successful as possible for the people that are like clearly passionate about this. Like, let's do what we can. What's your advice to someone who might feel stuck in their current role and maybe not aligned with it? Are there places where maybe on one hand people can reframe how they think about their role that would coincide with their working genius, or how would people maybe have conversations with their direct supervisor, their leadership team? How would you advise people kind of in that space?
Well, so I had one of my favorite guests on my podcast was someone that was working in a college setting with college students deciding on their majors and their careers. And she made the observation that, hold on, let me remember my thought here and why I was bringing that up. She, oh, it's for putting it on your resume. So you go into a setting where someone may not know about the working genius, but you're letting them know where you fall in line in work. And so to even just start that conversation right off the bat, I'll tell you what, if someone came in, to me and I was looking for someone in a hiring for a company, I would want, I would fall out if someone told me anything, not even just working genius, anything on their assessment. So I think that is a great place to start, of even just saying, hey, this is what I know about myself. But it's also, it's not this long paragraph. It's like, hey, this is where I show up really well in work. This is where I could be more productive. And there's having the framework of that discussion with a manager or leadership is great. So for me, maybe I'm a risk taker. Maybe you would put that in this category. So it doesn't have to blow up your world, kind of like I did. And it was kind of a perfect storm for me of, okay, I already knew I didn't love this finance position. There were already things that were moving around in the company. The realization, all of that came into play, and it was just, I don't need to be in this role. And it's not a matter of saying I don't need to be in this role. See ya. It's like, now let's just start exploring. So I kind of self-selected out, but in the meantime, I'm having these conversations with John, and he's already thinking up this other company over here that he, wants to start. And then there were reasons for someone else to be in that finance position overall. So that I'm of the mindset that you can't unknow what you know. And so once I knew this information, I had to make a change.
Yeah.
So I would encourage anybody to just explore. I have the genius of wonder, so I'm going to be curious anyways. I know people probably down the altitude are going to be more methodical about what they do, but just use it as a framework to just start exploring your world overall. And there's, you don't have to move out of the position, but you can, again, fuel yourself, look at the position. What are the things that are bringing you energy? Take those into consideration, either fuel yourself up or take a break and then do the thing that brings you energy. Like, just organize your day in a different way. And I guarantee you, if you're doing that in a way, you will show up differently on the team. People will recognize this in your personal and your professional life, and that in and of itself is going to open up the conversation as well.
Yeah, I love it. And that it's so fitting that like joy is the focus for you. It's like, because joy is super contagious, and it energizes people. It energizes you in your daily work, and it energizes the people around you, because you're clearly not a drain on them. You're content with where you're at. And so it might take a little bit of work to get there to begin with, after putting language to it. So I'm thankful for your help with me, as well as just the working genius itself. Is really great to put words to these things that I kind of intuitively felt.
And joy is just, it's, to me, when it felt more abstract, I couldn't do anything with it. I was just like, oh, that's great. Be joyful. That's a great mindset. But when you attach it to productivity, it goes from abstract to actual concrete reasons why you would want to show up that way. And overall, it makes the team more productive, it makes you more productive, and it influences the entire company as a
Yeah.
whole.
Yeah, love it. Who in your circle is currently killing it with this hiring and being aware of putting people in joyful roles? We've mentioned John 1,000 times, but
So I would say overall, anybody that is coming to me for recruiting, this is going to sound like I'm just giving myself props, but
go for it.
overall, if you've drank the Kool-Aid and you believe, because on my website it says joyful recruiting, right? So people who believe that, I think overall are killing it. It's just I saw on LinkedIn the other day, like 90% of the job can be trained or you can learn it. So
Yeah.
if you are of that mindset of, okay, if someone can come in here and do this in a way that they're not going to procrastinate and they're going to be filled with joy just by the tasks, then those little intricacies can be trained overall. So right now, I am recruiting for a Momentum Health Neuropathy Center in Michigan.
Okay.
And this is a repeat client, and they are highly focused on culture and team fit. Every team member on their team really matters, as in if that team member wasn't there, then you would feel it in that office on that day. And so they have a great understanding of how this works, and they have seen the results of the retention and the overall joy on the team as well. And right now, again, I'm working with the Working Genius facilitators. I think overall in the EOS world, anybody that's using an operating system, anybody that believes like Grace is the team, she's in the EOS community, the no honesty, the open to vulnerable and authentic leadership, I think is just the number one thing. And then you start going towards these things, and it's a trickle down effect. So anybody that believes in that is already killing it.
Love it. Tell me what's next for you and for InJoy. What's coming down the road? What are you like 3 years from now? Where is your vision? Where's your wonderment with where you'd like to take the practice?
I would love to personally have a built up clientele with repeat clients like what I just described, and then also be able to incorporate this or train this in other organizations for people that may already have a recruiter on their team that doesn't need a third party. But overall, I would like the messaging itself to get out there. I started the Pursuing Joy podcast just because of the premise that joy matters. And a lot of the guests that I'm starting to invite now are those disgruntled job seekers that AI is the one following up with them, that they have these dry interviews where someone's asking questions where they could just be on the resume. Like obviously the person didn't even read the resume because they could have got that information from there. There's just a very disgruntled workforce out there, and I want to have them come on and explain what they are experiencing and be able to give the comparison of what I ultimately am trying to evangelize out there in the professional community. So those are the things. The message that joy matters was such a aha moment for me in later in life than it should have been. I think. I mean, I'm glad now that I have an understanding of that, but now just giving other people that epiphany that overall in all aspects of our life, it really does matter.
Yeah, and it clearly gives you joy when you do give that individual that kind of epiphany, when you've been able to help them get there.
Matching people with their passions, I love that. I love making making that match. I mean, I'm sure people who match make out there and like, I introduced this couple and they got married and had 6 kids or whatever. I'm sure it's probably very similar to that. But when I can make that come together for business and the employee, nothing.
Magic. Love it. You mentioned pursuing joy. Any other, like, where else can our listeners go and find you and follow you to keep?
So my
in touch?
website is InJoy with an INJOYWFS.com for InJoy Workforce Solutions. Then my email is julie@enjoywfs.com as well. I'm on LinkedIn, posting Pursuing Joy, and all social media as well.
Great. Again, not to be too cheesy, but it really was a joy having you here with me today. I love chatting with you and the energy you provide. So really do appreciate it, and I'm thankful that you gave me your time today.
Thank you, Cannon.
Cool. Thanks so much, Julie. And for those listening, appreciate you listening, and we'll stay in touch and see you next time. Bye.